don't. Like I said, it's given max headroom effect. But hopefully, by me switching the resolution for my camera, I hope that helps to keep that little glitchy thing from happening again during the broadcast. 'Cause that can be distracting. But anyway, back to the situation with Pam Grier. And I noticed that there were some individuals that they just were talking against her, like she didn't see that and she's this and she's lying. And I'm like, how do you know she's lying? How do you know she's not lying? Like, did you at least take the time to research what she was saying before you just jump to she's a liar because she was on The View? You know, you may not like The View, and that's okay. But there are some people that do, and that's okay. But her personal experience is her personal experience. Now, I have people in my family, my ex-husband, um, his grandmother in particular, she was from the North. She went to go visit in the South. And as a child, she didn't really understand the level of racism because that wasn't experienced in the North. And I was telling my husband about it, and he was like, well, she should have been, told, like, you can't do certain things down here. And I don't know if she was told or not. All I know is she went to a drinking fountain. She wasn't paying attention to the signs that said whites or blacks. And she had beautiful long hair, and a man literally roped her by the back of her hair and almost snapped her neck for just drinking at a fountain. And it's scary that that happened then. And that was probably, maybe early 40s, somewhere around in there. Maybe mid to late 40s. That wasn't that long ago that happened. And the reason why I share that with you is because there's hundreds of accounts of that. My grandmother, and I've had her on the show, and she's 95. So she's seen some of these atrocities. She even shared with us, the her recant of my third great grandfather on her side, who was called Boy. And they called him Boy so much he didn't even know what his name was when he became a freed slave. So he took the name of his slave owner because that's the only name he knew as an actual legitimate name. And he couldn't read. And he prayed. And the first book he was able to read was actually the Bible. And he became a businessman and a preacher after that. Okay. And I don't know if any violence happened to him. But what I'm saying is you cannot discount someone's experience just because you assume they're trying to win points somehow. It's become really sad in our country where people can't even share their own recounts. So I'm going to play you guys the video from The View. And this is just the video from The View. This isn't like other people's videos and recounts, kind of bashing Pam Grier. And then I want to go into what I found out just doing a little bit of research from what she shared. So let me pull that video up. Again, I'm sorry for the max headroom glitching going on. Okay, let's see.
Breaking roles from Coffee to Foxy Brown to Jackie Brown. All right, and more. There's so many. Oh my God. I mean, you embodied the don't with me woman. Yeah. Did you ever think that after all this time you would still elicit this kind of response from people who grew up watching you do what they wanted to do, what they felt compelled to do, but were not in a position to do on the screen?
I got a lot of it from you. Well, let me ask you this, because you've been the first so many times, but you were the first Black woman on the cover of Miss Magazine in 1975. You paved the way for Black female representation in the stunt industry as well. But before breaking all those barriers in Hollywood and other places, you faced a lot of racism growing up in Columbus, Ohio. How did that shape you?
Whew. Well, the military wouldn't allow black families to live on the base, so you had to live in an apartment, and you couldn't take a bus. You couldn't afford a car. You walked. Your dads walked to the base, and sometimes we would go from tree shade to get back to the apartment. My brother and I, my mom, with bags, and my mom would go, "Don't look, don't look, don't look," and she'd pull us away. Wow. Because there is someone hanging from a tree. And they have a memorial for it now, where you can see where people were and left. And it triggers me today to see that a voice can be silenced. And if a white family supported a black, they're gonna get burned down or killed or lynched as well.
So that was her recollection as a child. That was her recant. And so what I wanted to do is share with you guys some of the research I did. I'm going to remove myself from
priority Macomb County Commissioner Michael Howard says he's committed to, arguing it's not just compassionate, but practical.
It actually costs the county more when someone passes away in the cold or when someone is homeless on the street. It's a greater burden on the county financially than for us to actually step in and be proactive with our resources.
Monique Cook's family says she was loved and cared for, and they did all they could to help her get back on her feet.
Macomb County Sheriff's Office says the investigation into Cook's death is ongoing. In the meantime, if you or someone you know needs somewhere warm to go, head to our website, wxyz.com, for a list of resources. In Mount Clemens, I'm Randy Wimbley, 7 News Detroit.
And we're definitely thinking about her family tonight. Thank you, Randy.
So I'm grateful, right, that they have highlighted, I should say, what was going on. But I was a little confused about the funding. So I was like, okay, let's check this out, right? And so I asked, like, you outline the funding for homeless, but I also wanted to find out funding for those that are undocumented, right? So for the current situation, the shelters like MCrest are at full capacity. Okay. Key issues, it says that there's insufficient funding. Okay. All right. I got it. Now for comparison, and those that were undocumented, that wasn't brought up in the video. So Grok is only giving me responses to what it can. Now it emphasized the lack of funding. They said there were no specific figures that were not provided. The shelters were at capacity. Okay. And they had an urgent call for increased local and county level investment to prevent these tragedies. And I said, can you look in the funding for Detroit? Now, right now, They have a balanced budget, which is great. They have approximately $3 billion overall, and about $1.58 billion of those allocated to general fund for discretionary spending. So discretionary means if they have a certain dollar amount, they can, at their discretion, say, use it for this purpose because we need it over here. So they've got $1.58 billion, not million, $1.58 billion in discretionary funding. Okay, so this marks the city's 12th consecutive balanced budget since emerging from bankruptcy in 2014, so kudos to them. Now, the budget includes contributions, $172.6 million towards legacy pension obligations, right? And maintains strong reserves for $155 million in the retiree pension fund and $150 million in their rainy day fund. Okay. Notably, the previous fiscal year, 24 to 25, ended with a $105 million surplus. So good. They're not underwater. They're above ground. They're in the black, not the red. Okay. Driven by strategic spending rather than revenue growth. So they've basically been able to keep their budget balanced, even though it's not based on revenue growth, basically, for businesses. So the budget process involves the mayor proposing a plan followed by city council review and adjustments. The approved version included about $26 million in changes from the mayor's initial proposal, focusing on council priorities like housing and transportation. Okay. So Detroit's funding comes from a mix of local taxes, state support, and other sources. Based on the approved budget, major categories include income tax, $432 million, wagering taxes, when that's the casinos, $292 million, property taxes, $174 million, and includes a slight reduction, $3 million cut to provide relief to homeowners. State revenue sharing, $253 million. Funds distributed by the state of Michigan based on population and other factors. Other resources, the remaining revenue includes federal and state grants, fees for services, enterprise funds, and the services like water, sewage, parking, enterprise funds from the Detroit Department of Transportation or DDOT, and investment earnings. Specific figures are for these weren't broken out in detail, but they make up, this general budget. So major expenditure categories. So this is the spending part of it. Public safety, right? Your police, fire, emergency, transportation, DTOT gets about $20 million. Plus council added $2 million for bus shelters, $673,000 for bus seat replacements. Blight removal, demolition, $21 million was allocated to that to just kind of tear down houses that were no longer being utilized. Pension and reserves, $172 million, plus maintenance of the $150 million rainy day fund. Other operations include departments like construction and demolition. So focus on homelessness, housing, social services, homelessness services, $5 million, and repurposed federal American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, funds from $14.5 million available, with the rest allocated to council districts. Okay. This supports emergency shelters, outreach, and related programs. An additional $8.4 million is mentioned in broader discussions for homeless initiatives. So housing and affordability, $3.7 million for community land trusts, $1 million for housing trusts, $2 million to expand home repair programs, $500,000 for Office of Eviction Defense outreach. This is people working on this. This isn't going to anybody to help them. $1 million for eviction prevention diversion programs. Again, this is going to people's salaries. I'm just saying. $500,000 for a universal design voucher program. Okay, is that going to people? $200,000 each for marketing, 0% home repair loan. This is for marketing, $200,000. Okay, $500,000 for a workforce housing fund for home improvements. This is just to sit in the fund. but they've got to get people housed first, right? 2.2 million reallocated for lead paint encapsulation program for older homes. So other social services, 3 million for the Stoppers Community Violence Intervention Program, 250,000 for senior food access and funding. Okay. So now comparison to homeless to undocumented funding. Now, let's see, Detroit's budget explicitly allocates funds for homelessness and housing, as noted above, totaling around 10 to 15 million across related programs, 5 million to the ARPA that we talked about. There are no specific line items funding related to undocumented immigrants in the budget. Okay, so I was like, all right. So I asked another question. I said, can you see if there's an Office of New Americas in Detroit and if there is funding for new arrivals? Yes, there is. Detroit has an Office of Immigrant Affairs, so that's a little bit different naming, which serves a similar function to what might be called Office of New Americas in other cities. It is housed under Department of Housing and Revitalization within the city government. Now, its purpose is supports both new and existing immigrant communities by creating programs, ensuring access to city resources, promoting integration into the community, and fostering economic development with immigrant neighborhoods. It's part of the city's official structure, which details available on the City of Detroit website. Now, note, there's no exact Office of New Americas, and I'm okay with that, at the city level. However, Michigan has a statewide Office of Global Michigan, okay, formally related to the Office for New Americas, which handles broader refugee and immigrant initiatives, including equity and inclusion programs, right? The whole DEI thing, right? Detroit's OIA focuses specifically on local immigrant support. Okay, so funding for new arrivals. There's no large dedicated line item in the city's budget specifically for new arrivals or undocumented immigrants, often referred to as funding for undocumented reasons. So there's federal and state programs. So most direct aid for new arrivals is federally funded via the Office of Refugee Resettlement, and state administered programs like Michigan's Refugee Assistance Programs. These provide initial resettlement services, including housing placement, cultural orientation, employment support.